by way of introduction, I'm Rick Snellinger, and I'm president and CEO of a firm called Chambers. And I'm going to take the first portion of the presentation, and then I'll turn it over to John Snellinger, who is going to take you through some of the improvements that we're recommending to the club. And then we're going to turn it over to John with Norby Golf, who will take you through the golf improvements. And then as you see up in the agenda, we're going to talk about various phases and costs and a review of the financial model, and then timeline going forward. Ladies and gentlemen, if you see on that last line there where it says questions and answers, and in parentheses, exit surveys distributed, that's where all of you play an important role this evening in giving us some thoughtful feedback. This is, a lot of information to absorb. But while you're here, we'd like you to fill out a brief survey on what you're thinking about in terms of the various improvements and the financial model and any comments that you'd like. We like to think of this as when we work in clubs, a member-driven or an owner-driven process. And John's going to talk to you a little bit about how that was initiated through the surveys that we've done here. But this is very important that we receive these surveys back from you this evening, if you will. And we have pencils for everybody to complete. So let me just begin with the presentation and talk to you a little bit about Chambers. Just have a couple of slides. But Chambers is an international planning and design firm that's headquartered in Baltimore, Maryland. We've been around since 1899. And since the mid-40s, we've been working in private clubs to where we are today with multiple offices across the United States. And we're a collection of architects, designers, and planners. My specialty, as well as John Snellinger's specialty, is working with boards of directors and planning committees, and ultimately the membership, in developing what we refer to long-term strategic facility enhancements programs, which we're going to show you where we are tonight in the development for here at Travuncta. So as we've grown through the years, we're the largest planning firm in the nation that has a singular purpose of working in private clubs. Now, we're headquartered in Baltimore, and that's where John and I are based, but we're also in Louisiana. Many of you are familiar with Baton Rouge Country Club or Country Club Louisiana, perhaps East Ridge, just to name a few of the clubs that we've been involved in very similar exercises. So through the years, we've been recognized as a top 20 hospitality design firm and a top 100 design giant. We've also been recognized as one of those firms that specifically is shaping the future of the private club industry. And I think this is very important as we talk about the future for our club clients. So as a process that we've taken through clubs through with development of these plans, we've been recognized for a lot of awards in terms of new clubhouses or renovations or pools or tennis facilities, a lot of the things that we're going to be talking about tonight. So we're real pleased to be here. And enough about us. Let's talk about what I like to refer to as why and why now. So by training, we're architects and designers and planners. And if you look at a planning exercise, it needs to be focused on developing a strategic vision. And so this first bullet point is improving the member and guest experience. Facilities that are at the highest possible quality within the financial reach within the club. That is the vision that clubs propose to achieve. The tactics are architecture and design. So we approach things a little bit differently in our exercises in terms of elevating that experience. Now, one of the outcomes that we like to achieve in our planning process is we like to see increase in utilization from the members and owners of using facilities. We look at what the private club industry is going through, and where the golf industry is going through and all the related amenities. And we try to increase utilization. Where you see if we increase utilization, what we've done is we've improved the value proposition within the family finances, or another way to look at it, the relevancy within the family finances. We also, as an outcome, we want to make sure that we're in position where folks that are looking at your community and want to buy a home in here, see a facility, a club facility that appeals to them, and they want to join this community and join the club. Now, this is always an interesting point, and it's kind of a little bit of a play on words. Doing nothing is not an option. Now, I've been doing this, ladies and gentlemen, for close to 35 years. And one of the things I've learned very early on in these presentations is that doing nothing quite as honestly is an option. We can choose not to do anything and continue to kick the can down the street. But I would like you to think about this a little differently in the next 45 minutes or so as you listen to this presentation, that everything, just like our homes and just like our community, as well as our club, have a defined useful life. Everything out on the golf course has a defined useful life, and everything within the country club has a defined useful life. And at the bare minimum, we have to think about systematic replacement. We've inserted a few pictures here, first from the golf course, of some of the examples of deferred maintenance that we need to address. At the bare minimum, we need to address, our drainage issues, our cart paths, our greens. And then as we look at the clubhouse in terms of just the basic elements that we all have at our homes, in terms of our roof and our aesthetic updates, and we have a pool here that is declining, we need to address that as a bare minimum. So the question is, doing nothing really is an option, but is it when you look at the state that we find ourselves here at Travuncta? So we wanted to put some, pictures say 1,000 words, and it tells a story. But we also wanted to share with you some numbers. And as we look at some of just the elements of the golf course and the major elements, that just addressing the deferred maintenance, when you look at the irrigation system, the greens, the bunkers, the whole list that you see there on the screen, we easily total up to $5 million of doing nothing. So the answer to the question is not zero. The bare minimum is $5 million in terms of addressing our deferred maintenance. When we look at our other facilities in terms of our pool replacement, our windows and doors, our HVAC, finishes, roof, parking lots, very easily to get to a total of almost $6 million. So we need to address that in our planning exercise as the bare minimum. We also in this exercise, and one of the reasons why clubs engage a firm like Chambers, is each and every day of the week, we're in clubs across the United States and actually international, and we understand the trends that are out there of where clubs are going. And so it's not always about what we have, but how we prepare the clubs for the future of what you need to be not only attractive for your current members and owners, but those that are be joining your club. We need to be proactive in that process. And quite honestly, there is a return on investment in all of this. But as I've cautioned the board here in the planning committee, it's not always about ROI. We easily want to put our business hats on and talk about, well, what's the ROI in that particular improvement? I like to express it a little differently. The ROE, the return on experience and member satisfaction in your families when you come to the club. And one of the things that I really picked up when Townsend was speaking today was about the thoughtful stewardship that's taken place here in your community. And you need to carry that forward, obviously, into the club facilities from a long-term perspective. Now, the private club industry has a national organization called the Club Managers Association of America, and they do a lot of studies. And I thought this was an important example to share with you. Of all the clubs that are out there, the private clubs and communities, there's probably a little less than 10,000 communities and clubs, and they kind of fall in three different buckets. And the first one on the screen is the red bucket. Now, the clubs that are in the red bucket are resistant to change. Quite honestly, they become stagnant. They're shrinking. They have too few members to really provide the experience that members are looking for when they come to the club. They lack the services and the breadth of the experience that folks are looking for. They have a weak balance sheet. And members that are there think like customers, not like owners. Now, you don't fall into that category, do you? You're owners here, and certainly the red bucket isn't yours. But when you look at the next bucket, the yellow bucket, these are clubs that are evolving slowly. They have 50% moderate growth. They've got adequate number of members, but quite honestly, they have a lackluster to above average services and amenities. They have an average balance sheet, and their boards oftentimes bounce between very, operationally focused versus strategic thinking. And I think that's one of the things that you can glean from Ward's presentation and Townsend's presentation, talking about moving the board to a strategic body and not being involved in every operational aspect of your club and community by bringing in some trained professionals to help. Now, there's a mix in those 50% of those clubs that still think like, customers, but there's a growing number that think like owners. I think you're squarely in the yellow bucket. Now, where we'd like to take our clients is in that green bucket. I think you're headed there, but they embrace change. They're dynamic. They're growing purposefully with a strategic vision and the goals and tactics to get there. They want to have a full membership roster. And this is an important component. They want to have a compelling member experience with a broad array of services and amenities. And in this presentation you're going to hear in a few minutes, we're going to talk about the golf course, certainly, which is an important, very important asset. But we're also going to talk about a lot of other amenities that you have here in terms of the clubhouse and your pool and your tennis and some other things. And those clubs, their boards are focused on making the club better. And I think you can glean that from the presentation today. And in those 25% of the clubs that are growing purposefully, most members think like owners and take pride in their club. And that was so warm to hear someone say, wow, I look around in the community and doesn't it look great? And that's what we're all striving for. Now, I wanted to share a slide here for you on a local club that we've worked with that started the plan very similar to yours back in 2012. And not to go into a lot of details here, but the long-range plan was developed and they began to implement capital improvements for the wide variety of their members. And in that top line, you can see over the years how their initiation fees have grown to the far right-hand column where they've grown significantly, only almost $15,000 in 10 years. But at the same time as the plan was implemented, their membership has grown as well. So going back to my strategic drivers, we want folks to join a club, participate, and those club members are paying for the opportunity. Now, as I travel around the country and I talk to boards, and a lot of these misconceptions often come up in board discussions. And some boards will say, Rick, let's just lower the dues, initiation fees, and we'll attract more members. And the facts are the clubs with the highest initiation fees and dues attract and have the most members. Clubs with lower initiation fees and dues have the least members. Sometimes board members and other clubs say to me, Rick, we got a great golf course. Golf is enough. Let's just take the pool out, fill it in with dirt, plant grass. We're here to play golf. Why do we need tennis, pool, fitness, and pickleball? Well, there are a few exceptions, obviously, out there, but golf-centric clubs are weak financially. Clubs with broad services and amenities are the healthiest out there. They have the most members and the highest initiation fees. It's always interesting in this next misconception, folks will say to me, restricted capital improvements keeps our club affordable. And ladies and gentlemen, many of you are business owners out there. Where have we ever ratcheted down expenses to prosperity? We have to invest in our facilities, and lack of investment is like kicking the can down the street. And so I leave you with this, that, you know, everybody says their club is unique, but this feeds the misconceptions that are above there. And, you know, I want to close with this slide on this particular topic, and I want to keep it really simple. There's two concepts that every club should embrace. A club must create and evolve a membership experience when you come in the doors here or involve yourself in the experience that is so compelling that they have enough members to properly fund the club. And they charge those members the necessary amount that ideally have a wait list. And the club must be able to retain and attract the professional staff to manage the delivery of that member experience. And that club also needs to have the funding to fund deferred maintenance, that obligatory capital maintenance, to reinvest in those assets. Those deferred assets that I showed you on the list that have totaled up probably to $11 or $12 million. Plus, they need to have the capital to be able to employ towards aspirational projects as well, to continuously add new services and amenities necessary to keep pace with an ever-changing society and the wants and the needs of the next generation of the members and the next generation of home buyers within communities. It's so very important. So I'll leave you with the planning process that we've been following before I turn it over to John. Ward mentioned and Townsend mentioned, we've been working for about a year and a half or so. We spent a lot of time at the club understanding, you know, the history of the club, analysis of previous work. We've done an extensive facilities review. We worked with the planning committee, and we never talked about what we were going to build or what we were going to design. It was always focused on how can we raise the experience for the folks that live in this community, as well as those that belong to the club. And once we had that down, we began to develop the plans that you're going to see tonight. And then as we continued on, if you recall, a number of months ago, we had a very comprehensive survey that went out to everybody. And that online member survey never talked about the rolls coming out of the kitchen warm. They talked about the topics that we were discussing at a committee meetings so we could validate to make sure that we were going on the right path. That's what was the North Star for the improvements that you're going to see this evening. Once we felt like we had it, then we went into programming cost and the financial options. So as you see on those slides, the red outline in step number 7 is where we are tonight. We're in informational meetings. We have 2 more tomorrow for the club members. And we want you to complete that exit survey. So we continue to make this plan in your likeness. As we continue on, we'll refine those drawings and the costing and the financial model, and then it will be put out for an approval of the Tchefuncte Club Estates owners on whether you want to embrace this plan and towards implementation. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to John Snellinger, who's principal in charge of our master planning programs, to take you through the concepts. Thank you.
Okay, good evening, everyone. So my portion of the presentation initially is to walk you through the survey results. I know not everyone is a statistical geek like I am, so I'm going to keep this pretty quick. The presentation that I shared with the committee was about 150 slides. I've tried to boil it down to about a dozen. But I really think it's important for you all to understand, as Rick mentioned, this is the genesis of really developing the plan, was based upon what the members and the residents were interested in and their priorities. So if you all recall, you should have received a survey that went out. We actually surveyed 3 groups. We surveyed the residents who are members of the club. We also surveyed the members who live outside the gates, or your non-resident members. And then we also sent emails, a separate email, a survey to all those that are residents within the gates but are not members of the club, to get their thoughtful input on some potential enhancements as well. So you can see we had an excellent survey response. We had 467 surveys that were completed, including 298 resident surveys, 102 non-resident member surveys, and 67 resident non-members. So that represents about a 59% of the overall membership responding, including 57% of all resident non-member households responding. So this represents an excellent response in comparison to similar studies. Now, it just gives you a breakdown of who responded from a membership category. You can see full regular member at 54%, lifestyle resident member at 37%. I also caution the committee that surveys are not votes. Just because 51% of the membership thinks it's important, you go off and do it. You really have to study the demographics. And 2 key demographics that you look at are on the slide here. One is the age group on the left and the length of membership on the right. You can see that we've had a pretty good bell curve with regard to age group. And then you can see a pretty even distribution, a little skewed towards some of the newer members that have joined within the last 2 and 5 years. Why these groups are important is really your target demographic for new members joining the club is age 45 and under. And that represented about 33% of the respondents to the survey. And then you can see the length of membership. We always like, as we're planning for the future of the club, to look at what members who join within the last 2 or last 5 years say, because they're more like the next 5 years of members who will be joining the club. So it's not that we discount what our newer or long tenured or older or long tenured members say. You just look a little harder at what the newer and the younger members are telling you as we prepare for the future. To dramatize the point, I've just charted out those that joined within the last 2 years in black. You can see over 50% of the members that joined within the last 2 years are under the age of 45. Now, we asked the survey, on the questions on the survey were set up very similar. We talked about potential enhancements that we as a committee have been discussing to get the input from the members and the residents on how important they were to use, so we could verify some of the things that we have been talking about. So I'll start with the swimming facility enhancements. We asked how important was providing additional shade and cabana structures on the pool deck. You can see overall 82% of the members responding indicated that was either very important or important. The reciprocal of those numbers are those that said neutral, unimportant, or very unimportant. I have charted out all the demographics. You can see where there might be some various different spikes or drops relative to that, but for shade, it's pretty important for all member categories, demographics. The next was developing a poolside grill experience with an indoor dining capabilities. You really have none to speak of out there now. So obviously this was very important from the members to be able to provide an enhanced food and beverage component out at the pool. We also talked about developing an adult cabana bar on the pool deck for enhanced adult-oriented socialization opportunities. You can see 63% overall indicating that was important as well. We also talked about providing youth activity rooms, and you can see overall 59%, you can see how it spikes with our younger demographic and our members with children under the age of 18. We also talked about enhancing the kitchen, and you can see equally important there at 59%. But obviously, the more frequently you utilize the pool on the right-hand side, you can see how important it is to you. And then developing enhanced pool changing rooms at 57%. Next, we talked about racket facility improvements, and you can see what the racket respondents indicated, providing developing restrooms and changing room facilities in close proximity to the tennis courts, very important for the members. You can see providing enhanced food and beverage service for the tennis users as equally important. You can see providing an enhanced tennis shop versus the temporary, I would say temporary, politely the temporary structure you have out there now at 59%. And then you can see developing dedicated pickleball courts at 57%. Interesting enough how that spikes with the older demographic. With the 66 and over, it spikes to 87%. So if you look at the potential fitness facility enhancements, one of the questions that we asked the members would you be open to considering the potential relocation of fitness from within its current location within the clubhouse to a new location near the current swimming and tennis facilities? And you can see that we received a resounding yes at 85% that were open to that potential relocation. You can see how that may change with the various different demographics. Expanding the current space for cardio and strength training was important at 71%, providing open space for functional fitness at 69%. And then we asked about your usage at other fitness facilities in the area. 42% of respondents indicated they belong to another fitness facility, but 51% of that group indicated that they would potentially relinquish their membership at other fitness facility if the club improved its own. So speaking to Rick about as Rick spoke a lot about enhancing the value, you can see that this would be a major driver. We then talked about potential golf facility enhancements, and John is going to talk to you specifically about those, but this was really our guiding light based upon what the golfing membership indicated was important to them. You can see bunkers and greens and course drainage, obviously with some of the issues that Rick showed you on some of those deferred maintenance questions or pictures. We talked about clubhouse enhancements, about enhancing the overall decor and aesthetics of this room that we're in today. We also talked about providing an expanded bar grill area for really enhanced adult-oriented socialization and dining. We have some drinkers out in the room. You can see replacing the dining spaces at 64%, rebalancing the dining spaces to provide adequate space for adult casual as well as family casual. And then we also talked about the potential of relocating the men's locker room for the upper level of the clubhouse down to the lower level. And were they open to that potential relocation? And you can see the members resoundingly 80% that responded to the survey were open to that potential relocation. So speaking to Rick about what Rick talked about with regard to the strategic drivers, specifically what would increase members' utilization of the club? We asked that particular question. In your opinion, which of the following facilities, if improved, enhanced, will increase your utilization? You can see member dining facility improvements, fitness facility improvements, overwhelmingly number 1 and 2. If we look at our full regular, it was member dining, fitness, as well as golf course. If you look at the lifestyle, it was fitness facility number 1, followed by member dining and swimming facilities. The next would be attraction for prospective members. Similar question, in your opinion, which of the following facilities, if improved, enhanced, will have a positive impact on the club's ability to attract prospective new members? You can see overwhelming 62% said member dining, followed by fitness facility at 59% and swimming facility. You can see what the resident member said, and then you can also see what the non-resident member said, the importance of the golf course in their Trifuncta Country Club experience. 45 and under, you can see the importance of fitness as well as the member dining and the swimming facilities. If you look at the less than 2 years, you can see the importance. Again, our target demographic for new members joining the club. And lastly, we talked about what the non-resident members were interested in, and we asked specifically a very similar question. In your opinion, which of the following facilities, if improved, enhanced, will have a positive impact on the club's ability to attract prospective new members, especially those residents within the community who are currently not members? And you can see overwhelmingly fitness facility improvements at 59% was the top priority. So that really set us up to develop some conceptual plans to share with all of you to get your thoughtful feedback tonight. It really is broken down into 2 components. One, we have the phase 1 components, which there are 2 components. I'll share with you the recreational enhancements and turn it over to John to walk you through the golf course. And then we do have the future phase improvements, which will focus on the clubhouse. So I'll start with the overview of the long-range master plan, and starting with phase 1, the recreational enhancements, focusing on our pool, pickleball, and fitness facility. Before I share with you the drawings, I'd just like to tell you a little story of what we're trying to accomplish as part of this. As Rick mentioned, we really wanted to study comprehensively your facility. So we looked holistically at a site planning effort to really include the overall pool complex, the pool house, the tennis courts, your tennis hut, the playground, etc. A top priority from the residents and the members on the survey was developing pickleball courts. It really is the fastest growing sport in the country. So as part of this master plan, we are providing a total of 4 dedicated pickleball courts as part of this offering here at Tchefuncte. Now, speaking to the pool, you notice the pool was front and center in a lot of the deferred maintenance elements. It is over 60 years old. It is one of the most deferred assets that you have here at the club. The last investment in that was in 2010 with just some resurfacing and redecking. So it doesn't necessarily reflect the needs and the wants of what today's members are looking for. Respectably, it's tired and antiquated. So as part of this exercise, if the pool needed to be replaced, we studied, is it in the right location? And where can we look at developing this new component? So given the age of the pool facility, the master plan proposes development of a new pool in approximately the same location, but it does look at pushing further west or plan north on the screen into the adjacent land abutting the golf course. So really in the area there, with the benefit of Google Earth showing you kind of in the area where the red circle is on this site plan. Now, the new pool complex will contain a multitude of different aquatic zones. It will include a resort-oriented zero-entry pool with some interactive water features, really replacing the existing splash pad that you have, as well as an adult-oriented plunge pool and a recreational component for lap swimming, water activities, etc. Now, the next major component is really embracing the lifestyle shift here in general in the private club industry, but here at Tchefuncte. And what we're doing is really the development of what we're referring to is a family activity center. It really capitalizes on the natural synergy between pool, tennis, ultra casual dining, and also the relocation of fitness to this new component. We would also look at having a number of youth-oriented activity rooms as well. So this location or this facility would replace the existing pool house facility into a 1-story family activity center that would be built in an effort to really pull pool, tennis, and these facilities together while really not losing any parking spaces. This new facility would also feature an adult ultra casual dining component with a pool cabana bar overlooking the pool and the golf course beyond. Now, we see this new food and beverage venue really supporting the various different activities here at the club, both pool, tennis, and fitness, but really providing a family casual dining experience for our members with young children, a great place for before or after t-ball or soccer practice, a place where members can come throughout the day, but also in the evening time. We see this facility being able to be operated year-round with misters and heaters to really support and facilitate that operation. As part of this family activity center, it would also include pool changing rooms, a tennis lounge with direct access and out overlooking the tennis courts. We would look at relocating the fitness and wellness offering here to have cardio and strength training equipment, open floor space, as well as group exercise studios. Locker rooms that would support our fitness and tennis users, as well as our pool users as well, that could have a well-appointed wet area with sauna and plunge pool area. And then we would also have a couple of youth activity rooms that could work in conjunction with the pool area, but also can serve as a childcare facility while members are utilizing fitness, rackets, or golf activities while on campus. So this is the conceptual site plan of where you can see the new pool complex as well as the new family activity center building. It's a 1-story structure of about 20,000, just shy of 20,000 square feet. So you can see where this facility would be located on the right-hand side in the salmon color. You can also see the development of the 4 dedicated pickleball courts in close proximity to our existing tennis courts. Also, as part of this, we've looked to really formalize some of the parking areas, as well as creating a wonderful arrival sequence to this new facility, complementing the existing clubhouse arrival, but also being able to add approximately 100 additional parking spaces here on the club campus. You can see the various different pool complexes there with our recreational pool, as well as our lap pool, our plunge pool, and youth-oriented resort pool. This is the conceptual floor plan. You'll see it's color coded. Everything in blue is member space, green is back of house, yellow is circulation, and tan is exterior area. I'll walk you through as we go through this. Can we hold questions until the end as we go through this? All of this will be posted online for you to take a look at as well. Yep, sure thing. So you can see as you come in the front door, which is at the bottom of the slide, you can see coming into a foyer area, there would be a reception desk area to greet you with a small retail component or shop. Right in front of you would be the grab and go area where we could pick up some smoothies, some fitness oriented, health conscious food. You can see on the left-hand side would be where our childcare area would be. This is sized appropriately to be able to accommodate for our members with children, and it really is to compete with some of the local establishments here in terms of its overall size. You can see working up the page on the left-hand side is where we have our fitness component. You can see about 4,800 square feet of open space dedicated for cardio and strength training equipment, as well as some functional fitness with an indoor turf area, as well as the various different workout type facilities. On the left would be a studio space where you could have various different programmatic activities, yoga, Pilates, those types of things that could be offered in that studio. The ability to flow out onto a lawn on the left-hand side as well. As you come in the foyer from the main center, we have our grab and go, but you'll notice to the right-hand side is where we'd have that ultra casual dining facility. That would flow out to an outdoor covered terrace for dining with an adult cabana bar situated overlooking the pool as well as the golf course. All of that would be supported by an appropriately sized kitchen with a convenient access from the pool deck itself, but the ability to provide great service flowing out to the casual dining facility as well as the covered terrace area. On the right-hand side from the casual dining, you'll notice is where our pool locker room facilities would be, directly adjacent from the pool deck. To the bottom right-hand portion is where we would have our day locker facilities that support our fitness and our tennis users with our plunge pool as well as our sauna area within the locker room facilities. And on the bottom right is where we would have our tennis lounge with appropriate storage to maintain our tennis and pickleball courts. Now, just to show you some visioning images of some of our completed projects, just to give you an idea of the level of finishes of some of these spaces that we're looking at. Again, the reception area here with a small retail component. We could look at that grab and go type area here as we come in and really provide wonderful opportunities for quick grab and go as you're coming to work out or playing tennis. We also look at the various different ultra casual dining spaces, a place that's really adjacent to the pool deck. It's great for families with young children, but not exclusively. We have seen these facilities work for a multi-generational membership as well. As we look at different examples, the ability to flow out from that ultra casual dining area to the outdoor covered terrace with adult cabana bar built in there as well. We could look at our small tennis lounge and retail area. As we look at our fitness components here, really being able to provide a wonderful workout facility here with various different amenities, having our studio to facilitate all of those group exercise classes, our day locker facilities with our wet areas, and then you can see our youth activity spaces in various different programmatic spaces. As we look at the pool, this is just one example of a pool. You can see with the various different components, having a recreational component, but also a zero entry feature. Another example that shows the various different aquatic zones within a pool. And then we also wanted to show you the pickleball courts, a part of 4 dedicated pickleball courts as part of this program. Now, we also wanted to share with you, I know it's sometimes difficult for members to imagine what the spaces could look like. So we wanted to share with you an artist's conceptual rendering of what the front of that building could look like as you approach it from the parking lot. So I hope you can appreciate that we've been very respectful of the existing architectural vernacular here within Tchefuncte. We've kind of taken the cues from the clubhouse and tried to marry those and complement the architecture in this new family activity center. You can see on the right-hand side is the main entrance. You can see on the back left is our progression out towards the pool. And then as we look on the back side of it, this can be that one story. You can see the various different pools on the side. On the left-hand side would be our youth-oriented pool with our various different water features and sprouts and mushrooms that could be in that. On the right-hand side is our recreational area. And then you can see the covered terrace area that flows out from the casual dining area. Now, as part of this, in addition to the recreational enhancements, and it was mentioned by Ward about something that we also wanted to look at, is really looking at your Lake Emfred property as part of the estate's property itself. So just quickly, I wanted to share with you some of the conceptual plans that we're looking at as part of this. We really want to formalize some of the area. We really want to be able to develop a dedicated road coming in, having our parking area with some restroom facilities there. We also wanted to look at having some boat trailer parking as we progress through the area. As you're coming on the drive, in your left area would be the playground with an open space lawn area to really create a nice amenity for the residents here within the estates. As we get closer to Lake Emfred, you can see the ability to have a couple of pavilions, one more centrally located within the lawn space, but then one a little bit larger, closer to the lake itself with a boat dock area. We have some kayak and canoe storage, and then we'd also look to have a boardwalk feature that really connects all the components that are directly in front of the lake. We also wanted to share with you this more color-coded one that just gives you a kind of an understanding of the various different spaces, and then wanted to showcase some of those conceptual images of what that could look like. You can see the boat dock on the left, the pavilion on the top right, and these schemes of various different boardwalk as it looks out over onto the Lake Emfred. You can see here as you approach from the main drive, the ability to have some parking, not only automobile, but also golf cart parking, our playground area, and the various different boardwalks that could connect throughout the lake amenity feature. So with this, I'd like to turn it over to John Schmenk to talk you through the golf course improvements that we see as part of the Phase 1 program.
Thank you, John. As you can see, my name is John Schmenk. I'm with Norby Golf Design. We are a golf course architecture firm located up in the Twin Cities. Yes, we have snow, and yes, it's cold, but we will have a white Christmas. So what we were tasked to do was to analyze your golf course and try to find the deficiencies or some of the deferred maintenance or deferred projects that haven't happened over the last few years. And so in adjacent or in conjunction with the survey that went out, we've spent a significant amount of time on the golf course, and we've met with many of you. I actually have a history with the golf course dating back to when the T2 development occurred. I've been doing small projects for the golf course here and there over the past 15 years or so. So right here is what you see as a graphic showing your existing golf course. And what we wanted to highlight here was, well, a few things. We have a list on the right-hand side where you'll see existing conditions of your golf course, and it goes through the main features of your golf course, such as your greens, your tees, and bunkers. But also in the graphic here, you see in the bottom left-hand corner, you'll see a couple of your golf holes that have a little shading of blue on them. That's where during your heavy rainstorms, your hurricanes, your big rain events, that's where those are the golf holes in the area of your golf course that stays inundated for a long period of time. And as Ryan and your golf course superintendent will tell you, that when that happens, it's not really a good way to grow quality grass and have a quality golf features down that area. So in conjunction with the greens, the tees, and the bunkers, which I think many of you can sort of see and as you drive by the golf course, if you're not a golfer yourself, this is an area that we try to highlight see if we can try to improve the quality of the golf course in that area. We have a couple things going for us in that there's a couple golf holes that were abandoned back in 2008. And then in that area is, I guess you'd call it Dean's dirt. It was back when Natchez Trace was being built and they were excavating some of their lakes. They needed a place to put some of their soil, and Tchefuncte was gracious enough to take it. So that area has been kind of filled up with a bunch of soil, which we can use then to make some improvements down those golf holes. But just to go over a couple of the features again, your greens currently they date back Some of them are 30 years old. Some of them were built like holes 5, 6, 7, and 8. Those were built back in 2008. So they're only 15, 16 years old. And then a couple other golf holes, golf greens, such as I think hole number 3, the putting green, and hole number 18 were done in the late 1990s. So they're pretty aged as well. But your greens are small in comparison to the average golf course. They have a nematode problem, which is a little animal that sits under the turf and kind of eats at the roots, which is a challenge for the golf course superintendent to maintain quality greens with that present. Your tees are in pretty good shape based on the age of them. But what we like to see is this equitable tee differentiation. So what that means is right now, if you look at the scorecard, it's kind of hard to make out on the screen. But your back tees play at a length of almost 6,400 yards. And as you progress forward, as you golf and play forward, usually the skill level of the golfer also decreases. And so when you get towards the forward tees, that's typically where you're going to have many of your seniors will play there, your juniors, your beginning golfers, and many of your women. Their skill level typically isn't as good as some of your top golfers that are playing on the back tees. So what we like to see on a scorecard of existing golf courses, those forward tees in the range of somewhere around 4,600 yards. But yours currently sits at about 5,300 yards, so it's significantly longer than what we'd like to see in order for those golf holes to play equitable for all the different skill levels. Your bunkers, there was a picture earlier, you probably saw it. It was one of your bunkers after a rainstorm holding water. That's pretty common out here. So what happens is that when the rainstorm comes, the sand falls off the faces and gets mixed in with the dirt and no longer has that same consistency and good drainage capacity. And so therefore the superintendent and the maintenance crew has to come in there and either pump out the water or find a way to get the water out of the bunker, push that sand back up on the face, only to have it happen again when the next rainstorm comes. And you guys get over 100 inches of rain a year, so probably happens quite a bit. So that'd be something that we'd want to address. And that likewise, I think Ryan touched on this a little bit too, and when he was speaking, that the drain tile in those bunkers are really old and they're not functioning properly. So we'd like to replace those. In terms of another item that we noticed too was trees. Trees are pretty important here because you have some really nice oak trees and some pine trees. So we'd like to preserve those whenever possible. However, in a lot of cases, they actually cause a big problem. There's a shade problem, there's a root problem, which really makes it difficult to grow grass under there, which for golf, you need to have good grass. And also, over time, these trees, and particularly in hole number 3 and hole number 4, or actually 3, not so much anymore, but hole number 4, the canopies have gotten so tight that the corridor to play that golf hole has become quite challenging. You have to be pretty much a straight hitter. So we look at the trees and see how we can strategically remove some of them to make your golf course a little bit more playable. Drainage, I think that's, you guys know all about drainage living here. The golf course is no different than the community. A lot of the water from the community, though, however, gets dumped onto the golf course. So it becomes a problem for the golf course, just as it is in your front yard. Now, there have been some investments made in that. Back in 2019, we were hired to help do the drainage from Pinecrest. This is old drainage that had collapsed and was no longer functioning properly, down through holes number 10, 11, 18, 13, and through the driving range. And I believe that's still functioning pretty well to this day. At the same time, we also renovated hole number 3, which was unplayable for a year prior to our renovation. Irrigation, that's an important one too. You guys have made an investment in the irrigation over the past 2 years. The old system was a hydraulic system, which is antiquated and golf courses don't use that anymore. So you guys have tried to upgrade to an electric system. So you've installed a bunch of new irrigation heads, which has made a significant improvement to the quality of the turf out there. However, the rest of the infrastructure of the irrigation system, all the piping underground, is really old and failing. And so that's something that we'd need to address if we were to do a project here on the golf course. Another area, you probably saw a picture of it, your cart paths. You don't really have much for asphalt cart paths, but what you do have is concrete cart paths. And the concrete in many areas is crushed and broken and is kind of a hazard to drive on. So people don't drive on it, they drive around it, which then ruins the turf. So those areas would like to replace the cart path. And then to talk about the flood issues down in here, holes number 14, 15, and 16 and 17. And then your lake banks. Some of these lake banks on the golf course down in that flood prone zone are eroding and starting to fall into the lake. So we'd like to clean that up and address that. So that was kind of our due diligence in terms of analyzing the golf course, finding out what are the problems, and then moving forward. But before we did that, we wanted to just show you here, ASGCA stands for the American Society of Golf Course Architects, which we are members. And years ago, they put together a pamphlet which analyzed the lifespan of the golf features on a golf course for clubs just like yourself as they look forward to possibly doing a project. And so, what they came up with, that your putting greens, the lifespan is about 15 to 30 years. And on the right-hand side, you'll see under there where it says TCC, that's what your current situation is. And the reason there's a couple different numbers there is because you have a couple different aged greens. The ones that were done during the T2 development, those are 15 years old. The other ones in the late 90s are 23 years old, and then the remaining of your greens are 30 plus. So either they fall into this category of potentially being rebuilt, or they exceed these timeframes. Your bunker sand, well, we talked about that a little bit. You have a vast array of different ages of bunkers. The bunker sand in some cases has been replaced, but in a lot of cases it hasn't. And that is something that we need to address. Your irrigation system, the underground piping system is very old, but some of your new control systems are relatively new. So those are, that's why you have a differentiation in the numbers there too. Cart paths, I talked about that. You don't have asphalt cart paths really, but you do have concrete cart paths, and much of those exceed the age limit life cycle of the paths. Your practice range tee, now those are 5 to 10 years is what they say. It's because it gets so beat up. But in your case, your range tee is actually very small for the amount of play that it gets. So it gets beat up even more. And that's one of the reasons why I think it was about 4 or 5 years ago, an all-weather tee line, a concrete tee line with mats was put on the back. That's to take a little bit of relief off of the turf so that you guys can grow back some of that grass and get better turf conditions. So one of the things that we'd like to do is not only just renovate the tee box, but also expand it to the capacity that it really needs to be at. Your corrugated drain pipes, that goes with the overall drainage. Much of it is very old and it's starting to fail. Then the bunker drain pipes, talked about that, and then mulching and grass. So with that, we then came up with a bunch of project goals as to what we'd like to do on the golf course. And you'll see that in the graphic here coming up. Rebuilding the greens, and this wasn't just something that we came up with. We also brought in an expert, an agronomist, who also spent a day with us or 2 days with us on the golf course, analyzing the agronomy of your golf course. And his recommendation too is that the greens have kind of reached their lifespan and they should be renovated. Rebuild your bunkers. Centralize your practice areas. You'll see it's a little disjointed right now. What you have, your practice putting green sits out back here, but your driving range is over there. And then the old hole number 17 back in the old rotation before the T2 development was done, that kind of acts as a practice golf hole. Well, that's on the far side over by the maintenance shop. So trying to centralize those and get those practice areas all into one location would be a goal. Improve the overall drainage. Improve recovery from flood events. Now, we're not going to be able to make these golf holes flood proof, but what we can do is try to get the water off of these golf features quicker and into a conveyance system that will get us down to the dewatering pump to get the flood waters evacuated. Eliminate starting the round with the par 3, adding new forward tees, as I discussed earlier, and leveling some of the other ones. Improve overall turf conditions, update your irrigation system, and then try to reduce overall maintenance for the maintenance staff. So this is the plan that we came up with. I know this is there's a lot of information on here, and from where you're sitting, you can't see it all. But there's a couple project features up on the right-hand side that shows what we tried to accomplish with this plan. But there's a couple areas that I think can't go into all the detail, but I want to go into a couple highlighted areas. So these 3 black rings represent areas that I'm going to show a little bit more detail. One of them is the lower left-hand corner of the graphic here, where the holes are flood prone, and how we could reroute some golf holes there and rebuild the pond system so that we can make golf holes that will be more playable quicker after rain events. Then we look at the driving range and an overall, what we would call a practice facility, where we would take all those components of the practice facility and centralize them. And then what do we mean when we're talking about just improving overall course drainage? And I'll give you some examples as to how we would do that. So first of all, talk about improved flood recovery. So down in this area, there's also one thing I forgot to mention when we were doing our study too, is that there's a couple safety issues on the golf course. And one of those actually is down here in this area. Existing holes number 14, 15, and 16 play in a very tight area. And in some cases, some of the better golfers actually try to cut the corner, which puts people on the tee box on 15 in danger, or the people that are putting on hole number 14 in danger. So that would be something, by doing some rerouting of some golf holes down here and cutting some new lakes, that we could address that safety issue. So if you remember back to the graphic, and I know you just saw it just real quickly, but if I go back here, we are proposing to eliminate hole number 1 as a par 3 and making that into a short game practice area. So by doing that, that means we're short of a golf hole. And what we try to do is restructure these golf holes down in this corridor to gain back that extra par 3 that we're losing as the first hole, and reroute these golf holes. So the objective here would be to not only use Dean's dirt, but also re-excavate these ponds and use that soil and flop it up onto the areas where we could then shape these new fairways, these new tees, and these new greens, so that we can direct floodwaters to collection areas that then we can take and pipe it off of the golf course. Right now, a lot of this water, and if you've played the golf course, you know, you play hole number 17, that whole entire fairway could be wet with a bunch of little pockets of water. So that's not what we'd like to do. We'd like to get those fairways elevated and sloped and contoured such that we can control the water and where it goes. Then we have this centralizing of the practice facility. So what we would do is we would take the current practice green that's currently out here, and we would move that into the location of what is hole number 1 tee box right now. It's outside the cart storage area, and it would be a little bit bigger as well. And then that would connect down to a 3-hole short course where you would be able to practice pretty much any shot that you can imagine on a golf course. If you want to practice uphill shots, downhill shots, side hill shots, bunker shots, bump and run shots, even pitch shots up to about 100 yards. So it'll give you a lot of flexibility, really nice learning area. So it could be used by James Lights as well. And then at the same time, we would expand the driving range tee and the target greens and the entire target fairway to the south towards the marina, still keeping a little bit of a buffer, but trying to get back that square footage that you really need for the amount of use that it gets. So at the same time, in order to do this, we would have to relocate your maintenance or your marina entrance. So what this is showing is a new relocated maintenance or a marina entrance, to the south, and it would kind of go through what's actually existing hole number 1 green right now. And then if you know that there's a pond, which sometimes hold water and sometimes doesn't hold water, behind 1 green, kind of an eyesore right now and doesn't quite function properly. So we would also correct that and improve that pond and use the spoils from that pond then to build some new tee boxes on hole number 2, which would be future hole number 1. We'd kind of push it down into those woods where it's a little bit lower and build that area up. Now, there's 2 different types of flood issues that Tchefuncte has. One is when there's a storm surge that comes and it kind of pushes water up the river and it kind of pushes it back up onto the golf course. And the other is all this water that dumps onto the golf course and on the community, and then it drains down onto the golf course and it hits these levees and kind of forms a big bath. And so that was what the first slide was or the earlier slide was trying to address. But here on this one, what we would do is kind of create sort of I wouldn't call it a levee because it's not going to look like a straight levee, but it's going to be a grading feature that would help block some of that water from backing up into the golf course and trying to keep the starting hole number 1, existing hole number 2, dry. So then improved course drainage. So this is an example over by, right now we're labeling them holes 3 and 4. That's the future numbering that we'd be looking at, but it's existing hole number 4 and hole number 5. So over here on the lower left-hand side is Cardinal Road, if you're familiar with that area. And so right now what happens is the water comes off of that road and goes between these houses. And it goes across the fairway in front of the green in a sort of a ditch, I guess you'd say. And it really makes it difficult to maintain proper playing conditions in that area. At the same time, these 2 golf holes are probably some of your flattest golf holes out here. There's very little contouring, very little movement. So over time, pockets have formed and it just collects water, kills grass, or else it invites weeds and makes it really challenging to maintain. So our objective here would be to create a pond on the left side of existing hole 4, future hole 3, to collect this water that's coming off of Cardinal and collect it before it has a chance to cross the fairway. This pond then also serves as a place for us to take on-course drainage. So we would contour the fairways using the material that came out of that pond. We would contour the fairways and create these collection areas with a small little catch basins, pipe this water to the pond to kind of keep the fairways high and dry. Then from there, there'd be 2 ways to drain this pond. One would be in the existing corridor that it goes right now, but it would be piped. And then another alternate pipe would go up towards the current exit over on the right-hand side of existing hole number 6. So this allows us to use that material to create some contouring on the fairway, to collect this water and pipe it to these ponds, and then help keep the fairways dry, and also help collect this water coming off of Cardinal Road too from disturbing the golf course. So then I'll go back to this again. This is a little bit more detailed improvement plan. It has a bunch of notes on it. I know you can't read those notes. I can't even read them right now either because it's so small, but there is a board that we'll have, and we'll flip it over later, that will be this graphic. And it'll show you a little bit more in detail all the different improvements for all the different golf holes that we're proposing. And I'd be happy to talk to you about those a little bit later tonight. So with that, I'll hand it back to John.
Thanks, John. We're rounding third and heading home. Appreciate you all sticking with us. So when I get into the cost, everything that I and John have showed you up until this point is included in the phase 1 cost program. But I do want you to all to recognize that this was a comprehensive master plan. We looked at all of your facilities. So we do have a future phase, which is really looking at this clubhouse facility here as an additional future phase component. So just briefly want to talk through some of these things with you. Our 2 primary focus as we were looking at the planning efforts for the clubhouse was to look at how we could rebalance the dining spaces that you currently have to be able to provide adequate space for not only adults, but also family casual dining, and also looking at your member event facilities here to be a potential revenue generation opportunity. Now, the layout of your current member dining spaces is very typical of a club that was done 15 years ago. You have a small linear service bar that was kind of designed for cocktails to go in before you went into kind of had more of your formal type dinner. And that's really not how clubs are designed today. It really looks at, as part of this master plan, it really rebalancing the dining spaces by flipping where your current bar is to be more into become the epicenter of club socialization and dining, and really looking at putting a dynamic bar in your main dining room here. It would be about 100 seats with a horseshoe shaped bar and really become the epicenter for your club dining and socialization life here at the club. Now, the existing bar area would be repurposed into a family casual dining area, and it would be assumed that the family activity center would really be operated seasonally, but could be year round. Now, with the fitness center being relocated, we have some space available. What we look at doing is relocating the men's locker room down to the main level of this area. We look at actually positioning the men's locker room to be overlooking the golf course, and then having the pro shop to be more on the parking lot side to really have the views as members come in. Now, that we could also have, as part of the men's locker room, a nice men's lounge area with the ability to have views out towards your number 1 asset. Now, the plan also proposes to relocate the administrative offices from their main area in the front center here to be in the upper level where the existing men's locker room is. And really by facilitating that move, it allows us to really open up your main lobby area to be a great space for pre-function and really be able to engage the outside into this space as well. So I'll show you how that would work on the actual drawings. But we really will look to aesthetically upgrade this space and really looking at opening up the administrative area to flow out to a new event lawn off of these doors here. So again, this is the conceptual plan for what we're proposing. I do have an overlay of the existing where it does show we are moving some walls. I know that gets kind of complicated, so I'll walk you through the spaces. We really wanted to look at your overall circulation within the club. We can look at the main existing kind of front entry and really having that more for banquets, and really looking at the primary golf and member dining entrance to be on the left-hand side of the screen, really the entrance where your current pro shop and the current fitness facility is. So looking at coming in the front door, you can notice on the overlay, the relocation of some of those offices to the upper level. It really provides that space to serve as a pre-function space, an area for cocktails before coming to the event. It really also allows that area to open up to the outdoor on the right-hand side on an event lawn. So it really could work from the outside to the inside pre-function and then into an aesthetically upgraded banquet facility. You could see on the left-hand side of the screen coming in the main entry for really dining and golf, you can see the relocated new pro shop on the bottom left-hand side. You can see the men's locker room kind of taking over where the existing pro shop facility would be. And then as we progress back, you will notice the relocated bar facility, being able to develop a horseshoe-shaped crosstalk bar, great for socialization. You can see about 20 seats at the bar, all of that with about 100 seats total in that casual dining facility. You'll notice on the left, the family dining area could facilitate an additional 60 seats. So really creating a wonderful atmosphere for members to dine. We've also looked at the connection between the kitchen to try to eliminate some of the cross traffic between members going down this corridor, as well as service staff going across the kitchen. So that's a quick overview of what we see for the clubhouse as part of a future phase. You can see the upstairs is where we would relocate the administrative areas up into the existing men's locker room facility. Now, just a quick visioning images, not that we're proposing what this would look like, but just to give you an idea of what some clubs have done with a horseshoe shape crosstalk bar, really becoming the epicenter. This is where clubs are going today and really creating dynamic bar grill experience for their members to enjoy. Again, not that I'm proposing this elaborate, but just to show you what clubs are going to and creating these spaces for their members. Now, probably the all important part, hopefully I've gotten you excited about some or all of the components of the long range master plan, but unfortunately with change comes cost. So I do want to share those costs with you and to give you an understanding of how we would look to fund this program here at Trifuncta. Now, I'd like to caution everyone that we have not developed full-scale construction documents and sent these out to bid. We are basing these on conceptual plans, so they are conceptual cost estimates, but be able to give you various different ranges of what these phase one programs would be. We had some discussions with local contractors in order to really understand what the magnitude of cost would be. The final cost would be determined following more detailed design and documentation. But just to give you an understanding of the range of cost, as we're looking at the pools, the pickleball courts, as well as Lake Emfred, somewhere in the neighborhood of between $4 and $5 million to develop the site work, the pools that I shared with you, the 4 dedicated pickleball courts, and the improvements to Lake Emfred. Now, as we look at the new family activity center, somewhere in the range of $8 to $10 million for that new 20,000 square foot facility. Again, that's our new fitness facility, ultra casual dining, locker rooms, pool changing rooms, all of ultra casual dining component with adult cabana bar. And then as everything that John showed you with regard to the golf course in a holistic look, the golf course improvements about $8 to $10 million. So to keep you from adding it all up, it is about a $20 to $25 million phase one program that we're looking to develop. Now, as Rick shared with you previously, just the cost of doing nothing is somewhere in the $11 to $12 million range. So if we're looking at doing those improvements, it would make sense to look at some enhancements as we do that to really bring the club forward. So these phase one costs are inclusive of what we see as the hard construction cost, as well as the appropriate soft cost, as well as a contingency built into the numbers. Now, although we see the phase or future phase of the clubhouse, we did do a range of what that would be, and it's about another $5 to $6 million in terms of the improvements that we outlined to the clubhouse facilities. Now, to understand how we would go about funding this program, we've had a lot of internal discussions relative to the potential for funding a program of this magnitude in the $20 to $25 million range. So as we looked at this, we really looked at developing a multitude of different financial models that would have the least financial impact to the membership as possible. So we looked at the several sources of revenue that could be utilized to be able to fund this. So we looked at the first component as being a member assessment. We also looked at the potential for a additional financing component to this program, as well as the opportunity for new members joining the club to participate in the funding of this program as well, with new member initiation fees included in this model. So obviously we're kind of in the conceptual stage now of just talking through ranges, but with regard to the member assessments, just to kind of give you an idea of the magnitude of costs that we would be looking at, we would see that the member assessments anticipated to be approximately 3 annual payments for golf members to be somewhere in the $5,000 to $7,000 range. And that would be 3 annual payments of the $5,000 to $7,000 over a 3-year time frame. With regard to the lifestyle members, we would see those assessments somewhere in the $1,500 to $3,000 range. Again, 3 payments, annual payments of that assessment. Now, in addition to this, we would look at financing to fund the remaining capital requirements, which would be serviced by an increase in member dues somewhere from $100 to $150 per month to your current membership dues. And then looking at new member initiation fees would be increased by a minimum of the amount of the total of the member assessments and would be used to contribute to funding the program. So for golf membership, we could see the initiation fees once the investment is made in the golf course of that $8 to $10 million, that we could increase it anywhere from that $15,000 to $21,000 in initiation fee, given the level of investment that was done. The same thing would happen with your lifestyle membership to be able to provide for new members to begin to contributing to this program. So with that, I'd like to turn it over briefly to Rick to talk you through the timeline going forward.
Thank you, John. So ladies and gentlemen, there's only one slide left, and that's the timeline going forward. So as I mentioned in my opening comments, John and team are going to pass out the exit surveys to you this evening. We have pencils for everybody. If you could fill it out while you're here tonight, we can get some feedback on how you perceive this presentation and the components. And once we have those back, then we will take a look at realigning the plan if we need to, further study on the cost and the financial modeling, and then it will be put forward to a vote of the estate shareholders. So with that, we are at the Q&A portion.